Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on April 27th, 2025 at approximately 9 p.m. Now, I've made it my life's journey to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I bill myself as a spiritual guide because I offer are the same tools I personally use in my day-to-day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies I use to guide virtually every decision I make. With this in mind, I know these tools will work for you because they continue to work for me and have literally worked for thousands of other people over the years with varying degrees of success and depending on their own personal efforts. Now, we are going to be looking at, quite literally, meet the reptilians today. And rest assured, there's more than one type. But before we get into it, we do have Storm in the background there. He takes care of our primary tech. And that's a challenge and a half for him. Okay, Lord knows how he manages to keep it, but hey, more power to him. Then we have LA Moon in the background that is often in the house. She is also the primary moderator who tends to try and keep the conversation going if it stalls. Okay, she's also the one person that will literally, while I'm on air, go, okay, you go get some sugar, you go get whatever because your health is failing. I think she's worried I'm going to have a heart attack while I'm on air. I'm hoping for it, I'm not sure which. But we have in the house with the goal is Operation Shutdown. How you doing? Glad you could join us. Now, I look at this, and I'm just going to throw something out there before I get in this because I stumbled across it on Facebook today. There was a posting that showed half a dozen different ships that the commercial pilots had seen. They listed them all off. This was listed on Facebook. Listed off these 6 different types. I took one glance at them and I wrote down below, okay, 5 out of these 6 ships, I told them who were the operating races were. Okay, and this is why I say there's a lot more reptilians. Okay, now I'm in the middle of combining those into its own book. Okay, literally titled Meet the Reptilians. Now, most of the time when people talk about reptilians, they look at it and go, oh, they're all doing this. This would lead one to believe, in most cases, you're dealing with one race. Okay, now in my opinion, go back to 77 to 82. There was a series out and a subsequent movie called Visitors. Now, that movie showed reptilians disguising themselves, Lord knows how they pulled that off, as human, okay, and infiltrating the world governments, etc., etc. This seems to have taken hold, okay, but that was one species. I have, and I will go through them, okay, but the short answer, let me pull up the book because I've got it open already. Meet the Reptilians. The short answer is I've got 18 reptilians already in the books, in this book, and between the 2 volumes. That's 14 that are off-world, and another 4 that evolved on Earth. Okay, now I know I've got more races that I haven't gotten to yet, but that's where it starts. And this is why I say, if we take a look at the reptilians, okay, we have to realize we are not dealing with one race. Okay, let's start with some that you know very well. Okay, I'm wondering if I've got those listed, bro. I do believe I found out something rather intriguing the other day. Well, Operation goes, are there more reptilians or greys on Earth? That is an excellent question. I haven't got a clue. Okay. The sad reality of it is, in all fairness, operation, I haven't talked to the consent to the way station to find out what the numbers are. I can tell you this: there's an awful lot of them already stated. There are more reptilians that I'm aware of that are stationed on Earth. Okay, than there are grays. Okay, the Reptilians, on the whole, don't stay on Earth for a couple of reasons. Not the least of which is the fact that their bodies do not handle the gravity here that well. Okay, but when you look at it, we can now, most people know about the big reptilians. Okay, now I've talked to you about the Strazazians. Well, the Strazazians, go back one step, we got the Sarkon. The Sarkon were a species that expanded too quickly as far as their empire went. They ended up cutting off 3 groups of reptilians at the outskirts. But when they went, we can't continue to support you. So they spent a year moving survival equipment, just the basics and basic replicators, that sort of thing. I use the term replicator simply because it's a whole lot easier than trying to explain the rest of it. But they sent out support technology to help the people, both from food, manufacturing, and medical. Okay, for the outlying areas, and they told them, on this day, we're cutting communication and reach. Rachel, you are in with the silver. How you doing? Glad you could join us. They kept they kept communication open for as long as they could, but it was a secondary concern after the transition time. Well, they cut them off, and we ended up with the Strazazians, Kamalians, and Tormenon, all related to the Sarkon. Okay, none of them are from Earth. Not originally. Okay, now that would be to start with. Now let's bring this up so I can actually get the appropriate names in place. Meek. Now, if we go to the earthbound ones, the Chitawari are a reptilian race that evolved on Earth. Okay, they are actually situated for the most part in Africa. More to the point, subterranean Africa. Now let's call up this and do it this way. Oh, way too many. Okay, we're not going to do that. So if I scroll down just quickly, I'm just going to look for the other, because I'm looking at all 18 that I've got here. I just have to scroll down and take a look at it. Do that a little quicker by shrinking that. The Chitawari, like I said, are earthbound. Then we scroll down. Those are all off-worlders. Should have pulled this all together properly before, but, well, you know how that works. So, we have, where are we now? The Terranar, they evolved on Earth. There are at least 3 somewhere in this book, and unfortunately it spans out way too far to bother with. Okay, but when we take a look at it, you've got 18 different races. All of them are carnivorous, but they range from 15 feet tall, from 15 feet tall down to about 6 inches, the Zotar, which are a gecko. Now, I've lumped reptilians and amphibians under one roof, simply because of the fact I'm not going to try and break them down by Terran zoological configuration. Okay, way too many complications there. But when you take a look at it, now, of course, we've talked about the Strazazians. They are at war with the Teklek. Now the Teklek are a 4 to 5 foot long raptor-like reptilian. Okay, they also happen to be highly aggressive. Now, somewhere in YouTube's archives, there was a picture of a couple of them, beautiful picture caught, running through the storm drains in New York City, or more to the point, under New York. Now, what do we got here? Susan Ahern, how you doing? You are in with the bronze. Glad you could join us. So the Teklek are there. Now, the Teklek have another little problem. They happen to have a civil war going on as well. Okay, and with that civil war, you can see where all that wonderful conflict is going to come in. Okay, we are not talking about a single race. Okay, when you're talking reptilian, you got to realize we are, and I forget offhand what the name is. There is a race that actually evolved from the Sycosaurus and one from the Pachycephalosaurus. Yes, these are, as they sound, dinosaurs from Earth. At the same time mankind was evolving, so were these guys. Mankind just happened to get a better jump on things. Okay, net result, mankind ended up operating on the surface more than everybody else. The other races are not the same size as dinosaurs, guys, but most of them live inside the earth now. Because I'm pretty certain that if we had a couple of full-size dinosaurs wandering around on the surface, that people would know about them. But what we gotta realize is reptilians are, on the whole, they're carnivorous. They are varying different types of government that they operate by. More often than not, they operate on a matriarchal system. Okay, but that's because the mothers are the caretakers. Okay, they're also the designers in most cases. And sad to say, guys, and I know this is going to go against what a lot of you have heard. In my opinion, in my memory, in my experience, women did most of the designing of modern civilization. But men, in their almighty wisdom, took credit for the greater portion of it. So with that said, let's go with a simple hats off to the women. Okay, it's kind of a weird thing when you think about it. People keep going, I want credit for it. And when you ask them about it, they can't tell you how it works. It does get a little confusing from my end. But when we take a look at the Struzosians, now here's something, I haven't done this in a long time, but I was going through my stuff, and I stumbled across this neat little figure. Okay, that is literally what a sarcon looks like. Okay, now the colors vary, yes. Okay, this is one of the figures I've been painting on my own. And there we go. You can see them a little better. Okay, but that's a sarcon. Now, if you look at them, if I were to put a person up beside them, they only come up to about mid-thigh. These are the things that we're looking at when you start talking about reptilians. Now, that's the only figure I found that's a dead ringer for one of the reptilian races. I've got others that I've been looking at. As a matter of fact, I missed one, come to think of it, I think I've just reminding myself of a 19th one. But here's the kicker. I've got one or two options. Now, the reptilians, I was trying to keep the book small until I got to the reptilians. And there are so many of them, it's a small encyclopedia of its own. Okay, what I haven't quite decided is whether I should put them all under one title or break it into two. it's still going to be a massive book. Okay. But I am in the middle of piecing it together and pulling that information into one place. Hate that. Sooner or later, it'll sneeze. Now, something I am looking at, and I'm pretty certain I found that I think I came across something. Let me just double check something here. Okay, let us find this. Okay, can't spell, that figures. You know, every time I try and do this in a hurry, it doesn't work well. Where are we here? Of course. Can't find it when I'm looking for it. That always makes sense. So we're just not going to go there. But I'm done with the idea of trying to find something that, even in my books, it doesn't work that well. But when we look at the reptilians, something we have to realize is you're looking at races that come from literally way off in the distance, but very few of them are related. The four that I just laid out are related. The four that I know of, that I can think of offhand, that evolved on Earth are not related to each other, aside from the fact that they grew up here. Okay. And when you start looking at them, yes, they are almost without exception, until you get into the little tiny ones. The Zotar are not combat oriented. But understand, the Zotar are only 6 inches tall at their tallest. Okay, most of them are only 3 to 4 inches tall. And yes, I said inches. Okay, needless to say, they're not much match for somebody 15 feet tall. You know, but this is why I look at the information I keep getting told. Oh, we're going to get invaded. No, you're not. Okay, now yeah, it is possible I could be wrong. Absolutely, it's possible. But thus far, it's been predicted for decades, if not centuries, that we're getting invaded tomorrow. But the reptilians are overall, number one, they are not a unified race. Uh-oh, did I miss something here? Oh, it probably hasn't shown up yet. They show up on my one monitor and I can't quite read it, but what do we got? Yeah. Operation, the answer is yes. The majority of reptilians that are actually on Earth live underground. Okay, and no, I'm not going to tell you where they are. Sorry, that's somebody else's department. I get kicked out of it because people go, oh, I'll tell you where they are. But the problem is, if they were right, number one, they end up either doing somebody in or moving. Works out really well that way. Besides that, since they're not invading anybody, where's the harm? And of course, somebody out there is going to sit there and go, well, if there's a whole pile of them there, then they're gearing up to invade. Guys, we got to understand, every race that's traveling around the cosmos, or more to the point, not every race traveling around the cosmos, has it out to kill everything around them. Humans seem to be a little bit on the trigger happy side. They're not the only ones. Okay, but the reptilians on the whole are, yes, they are hunters, they are aggressive from that standpoint, but they are not necessarily looking at invading. I mean, you take a look at the Muldock, for instance, which are, by the way, not reptilian, but they are professional hunters. And yeah, they do come to Earth because they look for hunting, but then Earth is a walk in the park compared to usually where they go. Okay. Now, did I miss something here? But I'm going to have to do this because that apparently is being a problem. But when we take a look at it, reptilians tend to stick together, okay, with their own literal species, because there's a lot of them that are in conflict with each other. The Tormenon literally deal with whoever's got is willing to pay the most. Okay, they are mercenaries to the core. Now, there are some that are not. You cannot effectively take a look at any one species and go, this is what they are. Okay, you can't look at humans and go, humans are like this, because they are wide and varied. Reptilians, like I said, I've got 18 listed here. Let's just try and do it this way. Meat. Blow that up, and I'm just gonna run it off real quick. Take that. We got Cheetawari, which are off-worlders. They're in book 1, by the way. The Kamalian, we just mentioned them. And they are, now the Kamalian are around the 7-foot mark. But you got 2 different Kamalian and 2 different members of the Kamalians. Okay, you got your warrior class, and they are big individuals. Okay, and then you got the smaller ones, which are your scientist style. Okay, then we've got the Naga, which are an off-world race that literally look like a snake with arms. Okay, but again, you're looking at anywhere from 9 to 15 feet long. Then we have the Rarka. Now, the Rarka, and let's see where we have right down below. They are, where are they? Okay, I missed part of that. They and the Rarka, they actually evolved on Earth. There we go. They evolved from the T-Rex. Now, the big difference there is as they evolved, yeah, they got a little shorter. Matter of fact, they got a lot shorter. But, now we all, a lot of people have heard that the T-Rex evolved into the chicken. No problem. That wasn't the only route it went. Okay, they also evolved into these guys. But when you're looking at something 5 to 6 feet tall, okay, and a carnivorous hunter, this is not somebody you want to tangle with. Scroll down a little further through it. Now, we've already discussed the Sarkon. Then we've got the Srazazian, which we've talked about. And Tormenon. Those are the ones I said were all linked. These are all, by the way, in books 1 and 2. And I'm probably going to end up with a few in book 3. Then we got the tech, like we mentioned them. They're only 4.5 to 5.5 feet tall in length. About 3 feet tall. Okay. Scroll down a little further, and we've got the Zotar. Kind of look like geckos. Needless to say, not that aggressive. Okay. Now, when you take a look at the Arara, and yeah, that sounds trippy. These guys are essentially, they look like a dragon with 2 legs. Okay. So, I mean, you're looking at that side. And again, you're looking at critters that are not small. These guys would stand out like a sore thumb. Okay. And that's the Ararahar, also known as dragons. You get to figure out that one. Now we get into the ones that you haven't come across even if you've got the books, because these are in the new books, okay, the Brocainen are literally, in simplest terms, they look like a twin-tailed snake. Okay, and it sounds twisted, and this is one of the pictures I'm going to have to be still getting done. They look like a twin-tailed snake with tentacular arms. Okay. And we have, then we got the sicko.
What are you afraid of?
Now, what do we got here? Let's do that. The sickos, where did they evolve from? Oh, the sickos evolved from the Citosaurus. Again, this is one of the earthbound ones. Pteronar evolved from the Pachycephalosaurus. And then, of course, you have the Silicon, who evolved from the Spinosaurus. So it looks like I've probably got five or six reptilian races evolving on Earth. Okay, and yes, I haven't found it yet, but I'm looking for the name of it. There is an albino reptilian race I came across that I'm still going through notes for. And of course, we all know about the Quaddle, which happen to be essentially a feathered serpent. But again, they are not from Earth. Scroll down a little further, and that's where that ends. Now, as I said, when people talk about reptilians, we got to realize, now that's just off the top of the list, and I've still got more to go through. All of these races that we've just talked about, I've got social information on. Okay, so we are talking about a lot of reptilian DNA running around, and I love the way that some of the reporters are doing this. You know, where they'll go, "Oh, it's your lizard brain." It's a great idea. Problem: humans didn't evolve from lizards. Okay, now I don't know if that's a colloquial way of putting it, or what the story is. I'm betting they weren't trying to be directly literal. Okay, but when you look at the different reptilians, many of them have off-world technology. Not all of them. Okay, but I'm talking many of the off-world versions, not necessarily the ones that evolved on Earth. Now, absolutely, if you've seen something else that doesn't fit into the ones I've already looked at, absolutely drop me a line. I may not know them by the names you know them by. Okay, but I've got a fair chunk of data, and I keep looking at it going, I can't have that much data. You know, I glanced at these pictures today, and I'm like, okay, these are just commonplace these are common cars, essentially. Okay, and it just amazes me the number of people that are lumping everybody together, okay, and going, all reptilians are doing this. It's like going, all humans are this way inclined, okay, and rest assured, skin color does not make any difference to temperament, okay, unless you take a look at maybe an albino, putting him in hot sun for too long, it's going to screw up his temperament. Of course, he's going to be burned to a crisp, but that might be the explanation there. When we start looking at reptilians, understand most of them will literally they literally eat their food live. Okay, most of them don't have a whole lot of hang up on the whole death ritual, as long as the individual doesn't die of, like the Srozosian, for instance. If an individual dies of old age or natural causes, okay, and I don't mean the combi idea of natural causes, Okay. I mean, their heart stops because they just plain got too old. Okay, if there's nothing wrong with them per se, they're dinner. Okay, it's like, thanks so much for sharing your life with us. One last meal and away we go. Most of the reptilians are that way inclined. Some not so much. And I'm thinking that I picked up somewhere. Wondering if I've got that. I'm not going to go looking for it because I keep trying to do that and can't find it anyway. I'm pretty certain that the Greys themselves, what you know as the Greys, what I know as the Reticulan, okay, they are of a reptilian nature. Okay, if I remember correctly, I was looking through my notes the other day and stumbled across that. And I'm going like, okay, this is something I've got to I've got to double check with. Okay, so what we are looking at is a lot of different races. Very highly intelligent. Some of them, like when you take a look at the Suzosians, they grew up on a high G planet. Net result, high gravity. Net result, they ended up developing very dense musculature and scales. Okay, not the neat little scales that are really flexible like snake. Okay, we're talking scales similar, if you will, to the crocodile. Okay, but of a denser material. So when you take a look at that, you gotta realize these races cover a lot of venues. Some of them are really nice people, some not so much. Okay, but when you look at, for instance, the Srazosian, they are born with the concept of respect. Oh, that's the easy one. The Argahar. Okay, Operation Shutdown is asking, what's the largest reptilian you have encountered? Ran into an Argahar. Okay, and roughly speaking, about 240 feet long. Okay, not gonna hide well in a city in today's world. Okay, think that'd be about the biggest one. Possibly bigger. I may have run into a bigger one, but that would be pretty much the biggest I can think of offhand. About the 240, 250 feet long. Now, understand, I am not really good at gauging length, but when somebody lays down, okay, when somebody lays down on a football field sized clearing, okay, and covers most of it, okay, we can safely say this is a big critter. Now, if I remember correctly, a football field, depending on whose football, okay, is about 100 yards, which is about 300 feet, meaning this thing could fit inside a stadium. I wouldn't be the one going in there with it. Well, actually, in my case, I probably would. But I'm a little twisted. But that'll be about the biggest. And by the way, before you ask that operation, no, they do not use weaponry. Of course, in all fairness, they naturally, I call it naturally now, they have learned how to move physically into the astral plane. That's where the majority of them stay now. Okay, they did used to be on Earth. Okay, as evidenced by fossils they found about 20 years ago. Okay, they found a neat little, I think it was about a 5-foot skeleton where one nasal passage was absolutely charred black. The other one was clean as a whistle. Kind of indicating fire breathing, if you ask me. But those would be about the biggest. The smallest would be the Zotar. Okay. And the Zotar, the average one is about 3 inches tall. The really tall ones are 6 inches. So we're talking, if you take a look, now if you're in Canada, we've got a phone company here called TELUS. They've got a little gecko that they use for their advertising. And they look almost identical to what the Zotar look like. Which begs the question of where they came up with the idea. But hey, what the heck? You know, but that's where you're looking at size variation. And rest assured, the smaller they are doesn't necessarily mean the weaker. Okay, if we take a look at the set at the Perkinen, believe. Let me just double check that. I hate getting things wrong. This is why I've got it all written down. Silicon. Nope, not the silicon. It should be the Procinen. Nope. What do we got here? Okay, like I said, trying to find it just doesn't work well. But these guys are a whopping 5 feet tall. But they evolved from the Pachycephalosaurus. These are not the guys you want to go headbutting. Mind you, on the other hand, this is the one race that can actually go forehead to forehead with a Kaldar and still stand. Okay, it's kind of a 50-50 split as who's going to stand up. But because I mentioned the name, the Kaldar are what you would know as a dwarf. Okay, when you take a look back at the Chitawari, they evolved in Africa. Okay, and yes, they prefer the heat. Net result, they tend to find volcanic access, or they go really deep until they can find a lava vein. Okay, but these guys are extremely dangerous in a lot of ways. What you got to remember, though, is these guys are quite ready to tangle with whatever they have to. They just don't carry around laser rifles, laser rifles or big machine guns, or for that matter, spears. These guys are quite readily able to go hand to hand. Okay, you don't want them to because I'll tell you their teeth are not something to play with. Okay, many of the reptilian races do still lay eggs. Okay, with the Chitawari, they lay 4 to 6 at a clutch, and then raise their own. Strazazian, Tormenon, and the Kamalian all put their eggs into a nursery. Okay, with varying different degrees of results. Sarkon has the same idea. Okay, so we are dealing with people that are, shall we say, intriguing to deal with. Little headstrong on occasion, but that's not entirely a bad thing. So we are trying, this is why I tell people, I'm quite willing to talk to people about this. Okay, and I certainly deal best myself with people asking questions. The thing with when you look at the different reptilians, okay, there are a few that, and we gotta understand, I refer to these as reptilian because they look like reptiles from Earth. That's why they're called reptilians, because people look at them and go, that looks like a dinosaur. It looks like a snake. Reptile. Now, like I said, I have combined reptiles and amphibians under one roof. And doing that, by the way, would place the reptilian. There is a race, I don't know offhand what the name is. I'm not going to look for it. Okay, there is a race that literally looks like frogs. Okay, now there's all sorts of places you could go with that, so how about if we don't? But I will tell you, this is only the tip of the iceberg of what I'm sitting on, because the information I've got on these various guys happens to be a little on the extensive side. Okay, as in we're looking at diet, reproductive tendencies, and what I mean by that is not the act of reproduction. I'm referring to how do they raise their kids, and most reptilians are hatched. Okay, and then work from there. But some of them come out swinging. Okay, like when you take a look at some of them, Strazazians literally have them there, and they pick them up and put them into the next stage. Okay, they literally make sure that things are well. I should correct that. Okay, Strazazians let the crazy guys get up. But the little ones, when they're born, are already attuned to the idea of helping each other. Okay, and these guys will go as newborns. They will go, and if they see an egg cracking, they will keep an eye on it. As soon as a noise is made, that's when they move in to help break the egg open. Okay, now don't kid yourself. These guys are not pushovers. But they will defend their clutch. And the thing is, as they get old enough, they're left in there, and what they feed on to start with is they start with the albumin from the egg and the eggshell. Okay. And if there is a stillborn Strazazian, sorry guys, babies don't get buried. They get eaten. Okay. Not by the adults, though. It's the youngins that actually survive that will literally devour a stillborn baby. There's no question about, oh, maybe we can resuscitate the heart, which is what humans do. You know, a kid is born, isn't breathing, strive to keep it alive. I'm all for it. In Strazazian culture, the kid comes out not breathing. Well, guess what ends up happening? And understand, if they can't breathe, they're not going to call for help. If they don't call for help, they're not going to get help. And sooner or later, that egg will dry out to the point it breaks. Okay. And again, that's where the carrying comes in. Now, with them, okay, when you take a look at the Strazazian, that's the one side. Now, the Chitawari, they raise their own. Okay, Kamalian are an interesting one. Now, the Kamalian protect their own as well. They're a little bit more socially minded than what the Chitawari are. As in, they will let the kids run throughout the community, but the kids come back to their own nest. Okay, Strazazian, they very seldom even know who the parent is. Okay, they literally grow up, and as they start to develop, that's when the caretakers, when the nannies, if you will, turn around and go, okay, here's where we send them. This is where they're showing the most aptitude. Now, don't kid yourself. Don't kid yourself. The Strazazians do have the individuals. Essentially LA it is. LA's just saying sounds like nature's way to me. It really is. With the Strazazians, they will keep an eye open, because if an egg hasn't broken open, the older Strazazians, the caretakers that are in there to simply keep an eye on things. They are not there to break up fights. Okay, they are there to guide the newborns where they need to be. And if an egg has laid there with a crack and not open for too long, it is broken open by an older Strazazian. Slap me in the back of the head, get me to get off the couch. Okay, they'll break it open, and the carcass is then eaten. Okay, but they give it a certain amount of time. If I recall correctly, I believe they leave the egg sit for a week. If it doesn't move, then it's not going to evolve properly, or worse, it's going to evolve and it's going to be incompatible with carrying its own weight. Strazazians do not work with prosthetics. Okay, if you end up losing a limb, they're not building you a new one. If you can function and still hold your own in society, they'll let you live. They don't kill you because you happen to be missing a leg or missing an arm. They terminate you if you can no longer carry your weight. Okay, because you end up, they will not, as they put it, waste their technology and energy on keeping a cripple alive. Okay, now do not get me wrong. They do not go looking at you and going, oh, you've got a bad leg, therefore you can no longer carry your weight. No, that's a question of, okay, you can no longer walk properly, but you can still hold a desk job and carry on. You're still viable. Okay. They don't worry about the idea of, oh, there's somebody that is developing what humans call age-related illnesses, like your what's it called? Like your Parkinson's, like COPD. When you start looking at dementia, these are illnesses that of a like kind will result in termination, not because they don't like the people, but actually because they do. Okay, if you've actually ever known somebody and you've had to watch them decline into a well of dementia, this is not good for the people or for the relatives. So Strazazians simply go, okay, your mind is no longer connecting. You're better served by either feeding you to the masses, or if you have to be on a starship, you get tossed in the fusion reactor. Okay, net result, you don't have a lot of body parts left over. This is why, with the entire Sarkon lineage, none of them developed the idea of either prosthetics or implants, okay, or organ replacement. You replace a kidney on a dying individual with a cavity. Okay, in other words, remove the kidney. Okay, but while you're doing that, you might as well take the rest of the body. Now, yes, I realize that sounds harsh, but we gotta realize we are not talking about human society. We are talking about a different way of looking at the world. And we are not, the thing is, most reptilians will literally look at each other and go, okay, you're a warrior race. Therefore, if you cannot defend yourself, you're pretty much hooped. Because unlike humans and most other species, the Strazazian in specific will not go out of their way, will not put more weight behind a child than they do behind an adult. They will, however, put more weight behind a newborn as compared to somebody at the end of their life. But that's because of the functional potential from a societal standpoint. one of the things we have to remember, okay, is that the races that we're talking about, these guys, by the way, all reptilians are not cold-blooded. Okay, most of them are actually warm-blooded. What you end up with is you end up with people that the amount of fuel they would have to consume is prohibitive of being that size, at least on most planets. Now, of course, on the Reticulan homeworld, it's really not that big of a problem having large animals, aside from the fact the plants will eat them, which might be a problem. Okay, and this is why when we take a look at the different reptilian races, understand the fact they're reptilian does not mean they're going to get along. It doesn't mean that they look at humans going, "Oh, you're an inferior race." They will certainly do what they can to help in the right circumstance. You know, LA, I tend to concur with you, and yet humans instinctively tend to do that, or maybe it's they were taught to. And thank you for the warning. We're down to 10 minutes, guys. But when we take a look at any race, you got to remember, as LA's pointed out here, their culture, the way they grow up, is what dictates how they live. And this is why, with some of them, yes, they're still born in eggs, but they don't all get treated the same way. Okay, I've seen some that it literally, the reason, and I've got to look into it. I know I'm pretty certain which one, but I do know there's a race. They will lay literally hundreds of eggs. Okay, but here's why they lay hundreds of eggs, and you're going to love this one. I'm pretty certain, and I don't know what the name is offhand, but I do know the back of it. Okay, they are literally descended from tortoises. Okay, or more to the point, they look like a tortoise. Now, here's the kicker: they lay hundreds of eggs. Okay, but the reason they do that is because only about 5% of them will survive the birthing process. Because as they're being laid, the pregnant mother is literally eating them. Okay. Now, it's not a race to see, oh, can I eat them all before they're born? Okay. It's a question of they go through that much effort. Okay. That before the eggs ever get hardened, they end up getting destroyed. Okay. Sounds barbaric from a human standpoint. I mean, let's face it. I don't know about you, but I just cannot picture. Well, I can picture it. I would not cotton to the idea of eating a newborn kid right after it was born. But you got to remember, these guys lay eggs. They're not taking full embryos. Okay. And no, by the way, they do not fry them up and that sort of thing. They pop them whole, egg and all, like shell and all. Okay. So the number of the variety of different cultural processes is mind-boggling. But right now, and I wonder if I've got it. It's the last thing I'm going to bother with. Let's go to the bottom end of it. There we are. I've got, now that's wrong. That's not complete. In the list at the back of Races of the World and at the back of Volume 2, I've got a complete list of the races. And I've got 119 listed. Wonder if human was actually there. Way back up here. Yeah. I've got 119 listed right there, but I think I've got more than 120 now. Okay, that are in the list. But there are a lot of different reptilians. Okay, and they certainly don't all get along. Now, with this in mind, see if I remember to write this down properly. Tomorrow is Monday. And we are looking at, and hopefully I did this right. And Storm, you can correct me if I've done something wrong here, if you would. But we're looking at the advantages of visual foci for your transformation. Now, something we gotta realize, these tools that I talk about, I hand them off to the different races as well. Okay, to different species as well. This is not just something that humans alone can use. We're dealing with those tomorrow. And that reminds me, I should probably put that list out. But with that in mind, we are down under the 5-minute mark here. So I do want to say thank you so very much for sharing your time with us tonight. Really appreciate it. I will be back again tomorrow. Okay, that'll be at 9 p.m. Pacific. But until then, do take care of yourself.